Hi guys, my name is Katie Runyon, and today I'll be talking through a history of the early considerations of mental illness. Now, if you've watched my other two video presentations throughout the semester, you'll know that I typically include pictures. Don't worry, on this one I did not include pictures. The first era I'm going to talk about are the Middle Ages, from 1300 to 1500. Explanations were widely based on supernatural explanations, like demons, spirits, or possession by the devil. Early treatment included letting out the spirit or evil by bloodletting, exorcisms, or what is called trepanation, which is where they drill the hole into your skull to let out the evil spirits. Hippocrates, in his lifetime of 460 to 377 BC, was among the first to suggest keeping supernatural elements out of medicine, and this statement was much later followed by Paracelsus, who died in 1541. Treatments didn't really improve after these suggestions were brought up, not much. It was actually brought to a change in France in 1682 after the king decided that the witches who were being tried would no longer receive the death penalty. With witch hunts came the return of supernaturalism and its treatments. The mentally ill were being chained, beaten, fed only enough to be kept alive, bloodletting, and letting the patients be put on display for paying sightseers. The death penalty was abolished in 1682 for people who were tried for witchcraft. After the king was convinced it was mental illness and not possession, treatments became spinning the patient around in a chair very rapidly, or throw several buckets of ice water on the patient, or inducing shock on chained patients. Behavior supposedly stopped after these treatments. So while the people who were being convicted and killed during the witch hunts were no longer being killed, they were subjected to treatments which were just as bad. The first person I'm going to talk about is Philip Pinel, who lived in 1745 to 1826. He discovered the treatment of the mentally ill in France after his friend developed a mental illness. He learned the conditions of mental asylums and brought about a change because he thought they were abhorrent. He became the director of two of the largest French mental asylums. He removed the chains, he changed treatments, he let people go when they were ready to do so, he stopped bloodletting, started keeping records, the number of deaths increased in the asylums, and the people who were cured and then let go were massively updated. He was one of the main active reasons humanitarian treatment of the mentally ill was brought forth. Next, we have Benjamin Rush, who is referred to as the first U.S. psychiatrist. He lived from 1745 to 1813. He was friends with Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. He served under George Washington, and he was one of the original signers of the Declaration of Independence. He argued for the abolition of slavery. He opposed capital punishment and the public humiliation of offenders, and the inhumane treatment of prisoners. He advocated for the education of women, and he believed it was abominable that the mentally ill were treated like inmates or zoo animals, and they were no longer to be paraded around for sightseers. He did, however, advocate for bloodletting and the use of rotating and tranquilizing chairs. He believed that bloodletting relieved vascular congestion, that rotating relieved the patient's congested brain, and that strapping a patient's arms and legs in a so-called tranquilizing chair calmed the patient. I don't think so. Next, we have Dorothy Lind Dix, who lived from 1802 to 1887. She did things different than the conventional way, but it was still awesome and impactful just the same. She saw what was wrong in the asylums and let people have it. In 3 years, she traveled to 18 different states and let them know what they were doing wrong in their institutions and how they could fix it. And most of them did. She spent 40 years on this endeavor of the better treatment for the mentally ill, and it didn't just stay in the United States. At one point during her 40 years, she traveled to Europe, met the Queen and the Pope, and convinced them to treat their mentally ill better. Throughout the rest of history, there have been some ups and downs, and that's putting it lightly, trust me. The forward march of improvement is still around today and people raising awareness to destigmatize mental illness. But that has been a history of the early considerations of the mentally ill. Thank you guys.